Hi, good afternoon, everybody. It's a great pleasure to welcome you from Tartu. It's quite unfortunate that you all cannot be in Tartu with us today. I'm Sven Parkel from Tartu Biotechnology Park, and I am bringing you the first seminar of a series of webinars that we have planned within the CELIS project. Let me just briefly share my screen with you, just to, I hope it's visible for you. And as I briefly mentioned, we're here gathered in the framework of the CELIS project. This contains partners from Tartu, Copenhagen, Leuven, and Heidelberg. Our seminar is the first one in this series, and the aim of these events was actually to be event exchange, and this meant that we were inviting people from all over Europe to join our cluster, to visit and share our cluster and share our experience in digitalization in life sciences, which is the main aim of this project. Unfortunately, you can only be here via digital methods, but I still hope you will enjoy this seminar. So I will also say briefly a few words about the Tartu cluster. The Tartu cluster, Tartu Health Cluster, is mainly built around the University of Tartu, which is the largest university in Estonia and provides more than half of the scientific output of Estonia. It has linked also University Hospital, which is engaged in many activities with companies, startups, and SMEs. They do clinical trials, they do research, and they provide consultation services for companies. And another institute that is worth mentioning in regard of today's webinar is the Institute of Genomics. I hope Tõnu, Esko will also provide you some insights later. But Institute of Genomics holds also Estonian Genome Bank, which is a genome population bank and provides population genome data for personal medicine purposes and thus also for digitalization. So in Estonia, when we talk about digitalization in health, then Estonian government has done quite a bit, allowing the exchange of information between different data silos with the help of X-Road, which is a sort of secure data exchange layer, and helps technically or enables the data exchange between data silos, and also in theory at least the analysis and use of this data for commercial purposes. But enough about me, enough about Tartu at this stage. As mentioned, this is the first webinar of 3. We will have one today, one tomorrow, and one next week. And this kind of series will be later followed in Copenhagen, Leuven, and Heidelberg. You will hear more about this quite soon. It's unfortunate that you cannot be with us in Tartu today. It's quite lovely weather here, sun is shining. But I hope you will still enjoy the webinar and enjoy the content and presentations we have brought for you. The day will be moderated by Sachin. I hope Sachin is more or less ready to take over and walk us through the day. And thank you all, and enjoy the seminar.
Thank you, Sven. And I'm very excited, although remotely, but very excited for today's program. And I think the project CELIS has done a great job. And I think never in my life I have seen more thought power packed into one session than today. And all the 4 speakers are, I think, world class. So we start today with Dr. Aaviksoo, and I can see that Ain is there already in. So a few words about Ain. If you read through Ain's background, of course, he's a medical doctor from University of Tartu, and has done his master's in public health from Harvard. But apart from being a clinician, he has also been a policy maker and also an entrepreneur. So I would say overall a very holistic personality, and I have previously interacted with Ain, always impressed with the clarity of thought and vision. So without further ado, let's hear the first presentation from Dr. Ain Aaviksoo.
Hello, my name is Aaviksoo. I am very happy to try to inspire you in my own humble way. I have been a passionate enthusiast of digital solutions in healthcare from the time I was actively since I started my medical studies. My first encounter with the computers was, I believe, in year 1986 or so, with a friend of mine who later became the chief architect of Skype and chief architect of Estonian information system. We tried to build a software or solution where you can build your ideal diet, so that we had a spreadsheet of all the food items and then the ingredients in there, and then we were trying to build an algorithm that you could have your perfect diet. Didn't work out too well because we got very strange combinations. But time has passed. I've learned a few things over the last 30 years. So this is what I'm telling to you today. So what might be one approach to the complex challenge of digitizing healthcare? So I come from a company called GuardTime, which has been around since 2007 and was born actually more or less at the request of the Estonian government. So the technology was born then, and later on the technology gave also birth to the company. It is the story of an Estonian, and any Estonian will tell you that living in a digital society is empowering. And I promise myself that I will show this slide until I can get rid of the small print on the bottom. So currently you can do almost everything digitally, but there are a few things. You can't get married or divorced, and you can't sell real estate online. So those are considered high risk transactions, which means that there should be a representative by the state next to you, looking into your eye and asking, is this really the thing that you want to do? So other than that, it really is my strong belief that you can make life enjoyable. You can try new things and do new things if you master the digital approach to actually everyday practices. Now, what is important about Estonia, and I've heard so many times the digital solutions or the digital context for healthcare has been praised many times. And I do think really that is for good reason. So there are applications or cool end user solutions that are much, much better than I have ever seen in Estonia. But what Estonia did right, because it has been the cornerstone of the whole digital health architecture, is that secure exchange of data was believed to be the most important thing. So you need to have different stakeholders working together, but also not only in healthcare. So there are combinations with healthcare and social care, but also healthcare as a business has to do with business registry, healthcare as an area where you would have counting individuals who, some of them are born, some of them unfortunately every now and then die. So this is what is usually managed in the population registry. And then, for instance, in the case of Estonia, this is related, our health insurance is based on your employment status, so that employment registry is also linked to that. And probably in different countries, that list is slightly different, but the bottom line is that there are always integrations of workflows, and the digital architecture needs to support that. So this is, one could say that difficult to swallow, but many others, but this is given in Estonia. So this was not really built for healthcare specifically. This is the environment where we have been living and where we have been building our solutions, so that I can say that I'm very lucky to come from this circumstances. I can see the world is moving to that direction for all the others as well. Now, if you then start from the situation when all your data is digital, and increasingly so, it is only digital because it is created digitally in the first place. And then when you encounter a serious threat to your very basic integrity, which is that you know about yourself, in this case as a state, one would choose the option to fear and try not to work with this in such a way anymore. Estonia chose different options. So the mere threat that your digital information may not be usable in the future was actually turned into an opportunity. Can we prove the time, integrity, origin, or the provenance of that data in the future? Can you build us such a solution? And this is what was built. Before I go to adding and describing what is the glue, the trust glue that enables future wonderful healthcare services to make use of digital data, I will first tell you our very specific approach, how we understand healthcare data challenges. Now, first, the rooted belief tells that healthcare is and will remain fragmented, so that there is no reason to believe that all healthcare services will be rendered in one place. Actually, on the contrary, when diseases are treated outside of hospital, not just in people's home, but they move around, they even travel not just within one country, but across the globe. So healthcare is happening in many places at the same time. And still at the same time, those different stakeholders would like to have single version of truth. What is the current situation of the patient? What has been the past? What have been the other encounters that in relation to this health condition this individual has undergone? So there needs to be a way how to make this single version of truth available to everyone, and at the same time maintain the privacy. It has to be possible that health system is supporting me even if I'm not actively engaging with them, but at the same time I wouldn't like these invisible actions to happen so that I'm not aware at all what it is. So this is the conceptual model that we believe is universal to whatever healthcare solutions you're building. Hence, in addition to data security, data privacy, it is very important to also have integrity of processes. So that if you now close your eyes and think that the situation or the world that I just described a minute ago, where you would have those different people running around in different places, if people have more than one diagnosis, then different healthcare facilities and different healthcare professionals looking at the data, trying to support them. And this is happening sometimes simultaneously. There are divergences of workflows, and then they converge again. You need not only to secure the data in one location, but you need to follow what is happening. And you may have some basic principles that you allow or disallow to happen, but it has to be flexible, that you flag if something doesn't go exactly as planned, but you can't block those activities entirely, because then you would have a very rigid system. So that cybersecurity, compliance, audit and reconciliation, trusted third parties are just, in our understanding, very kind of old and clumsy ways that are built on the analog and paper world, whereas in the digital world, where we want things happen instantaneously, very flexibly, you need to have a technology that supports just this process integrity in its own right. And this is what the flagship technology that GuardTime and our tech stack is built upon enables. So this is KSI blockchain, and it is a different breed of blockchain, which means that the data is not stored what is called on-chain or inside the blockchain, and is not carried along over the period of time. Instead, only the data assets, which may be PDF document, can be electronic medical record, can be configuration of your software, can be a digital image, basically anything. And you calculate one-way cryptographic hash from that. It is like a fingerprint. And then you store this fingerprint on the distributed ledger. and then give back to the original owner of that data proof of registration. And that gives the data a guarantee for immutability in terms of if that data asset is ever shown again to any other individual or computer or software, the end user can independently verify whether the data is as it was at the time of creation, what that time of creation was, and by whom this was created. So that in one hand, the data never leaves the system, which means that this blockchain is not used for transport functions. So transport functionality you still need to create and maintain, and there are different ways how you can do that. But again, you can start building your workflows and processes and decision-making algorithms based on the data that you can trust upon. And I'm going to tell you one tiny additional trick that you can do with this kind of signing of data in time. The service is recognized as a trust service across globe. Just recently, also ADAS credited is as a trust service in Europe. And now here is the workflow and process feature of KSI blockchain. So you can start building provenance of what is happening with your data. You can combine that with the consent, which means that certain activities can happen only after the consent has been given. And if you remember, this blockchain signing was done in time. So every second, a new block is added and the history cannot be changed, which means that you can actually track in time how the information has flowed. If there is convergence of information, you can actually go back and see where that data came from. If there is divergence, you can actually follow each lineage of that data processing. And this is what makes it so powerful. So you don't need to know all of that information. You don't need to create full database where all the activities are happening. What you need to know is where this data came from, and then you can apply different protocols and procedures, how much of kind of in-depth detailed studying of that is necessary in order to be certain that the privacy has been maintained or the integrity of the data itself. Some of those processes you can automate. You can even send human auditors to check for that, but you always know that the original cannot be changed or tampered. So if you go there with a kind of machine query or send the human auditors, you can be certain that this provenance is maintained intact. Now, this has created us, and now I will come to the inspiration bit, to the world where you can basically see any data. And by seeing, I mean not that you can touch it, not that you can hold it with you, but actually you're capable of asking meaningful, relevant, authorized questions, and then send the computers to find the data and then compute the response for you and get a response without actually having access to the data. And this is what we call data visibility. Not all problems can be solved in that way. So sometimes you need for very complex processing, or if one doctor wants to consult with another one around your disease, then it's again legitimate if that medical record in its full flesh or part of that is sent to another doctor. What I'm trying to tell here that the discussion whether data should be shared or not is not maybe appropriate until we decouple that when it is appropriate to share the data and when you can actually make the data accessible without sharing. Because if on the bottom you have a blockchain which secures the integrity of the data in its truthfulness, but also the process, then if you trust the process, then you can actually trust the result without actually working through that process on your own. It is like your friend is telling something, and if you trust your friend, you don't need to verify every single part of the story that your friend is telling. And the very practical example that we see a lot of traction now in healthcare is that instead of building huge data lakes, which has been the quest maybe for the last 10 years, where each pharma company is talking, they're building data lake, and then countries are building data lakes, and hospitals are building data lakes, and then research organizations are building data lakes, and all of them make this interesting assumption that all the other data holders will feed into their lakes, where then each of those data lake owners can work, and in a good sense, literally fishing, or actually trying to find patterns which are meaningful and useful. Never going to happen, I'm going to tell you, because we cannot add another layer of complexity on top of all already very complex and fragmented health systems. So what we envisage is that if you turn that the other way around and actually start from a question, like how many patients on medicine X got it for indication Y and continued treatment for 6 months or more. So this is a question that a pharma company and the payer would actually like to know. They would like to know that the response that will be given is something that they can both trust, so that not just millions, in the future billions, can be released based on the answer to this question. So how could you build such platform that enables you to answer this question? So first, you secure the data in their original location, which means that whatever is now later on done with that data, you know that this information is based upon reliable information. And then we're using multi-party computation, and you can denote, we've denoted here that this is, you can automate the auditing of that. So that if now this aggregate is used to track those deals and the results, the single version of truth is shown to pharma company, to the payer, insurance, or also to the hospitals participating. Because in tiny country Estonia, not all hospitals know how the other hospitals are doing. And sometimes doctors are not willing to share freely their data, just all the data to everyone else. But in this way, you can engage in different kind of collaborative models so that you know your data, you know what the end result is, but you're not immediately bare bones in front of all the others. So you have a universal interface for all the stakeholders. You have pre-configured queries so that it's not random queries that this system enables to do, so that the control of the data holders is maintained throughout the whole process. The data itself does not leave the data holder. You can, some hospitals might join in some of those agreements. Others might join in a smaller number of agreements for whatever reason. So they have full control what is happening with the data and who is seeing that. You can use the similar approach, actually not to protect the privacy, but also to protect the proprietary information, so that the solution that we built for supply chain healthcare, in order to have better understanding and visibility to mitigate the drug shortage problem, where the wholesalers are not necessarily interested in showing what kind of contracts they have with the retail pharmacies or hospital pharmacies, but at the same time, if the drug runs out at the pharmacy, it is sometimes too late to just take the action, because the supply chain can be months long. So that, again, in a similar manner, you can have an aggregated overview of what is happening in a country, but then each business entity can still maintain and run their own business. And last but not least, you will hear in the next presentation about how and what you can do with the genomic data. Now, the genomic data usually requires your data to be in one location. What you can do in the similar manner is that you can basically monitor all the analytical processes within an environment, and that enables and opens up very interesting new possibilities, how you can collaborate across different databases, across different entities. Even you can create the same kind of safe environment in a cloud and still be aware and know for sure what data was put in there, who made what kind of queries, and what was the end result. So you can protect the privacy, but you can also protect the intellectual property. So, for instance, if the agreement by Estonian Genome Bank is with a pharma company that the study is about cardiovascular diseases, but then something interesting is found on mental health, for instance, then the royalty agreement, for instance, should cover both of those areas, even if maybe in the beginning only the cardiovascular diseases were mentioned. And the very last thing, which is still deep in our R&D department, but the same provenance approach you can use to increase trustworthiness of AI. So you can slice in a tiny pieces and actually also try to monitor what data, how the training happened, what were the minuscule configuration changes in your AI model, so that you can later on basically have at least to some extent explainable AI, which is now the requirement for any AI solutions in the healthcare domain. And the very recent thing that we're working right now, I hope you will have it soon in your pockets, which is globally verifiable COVID-19 certificate. So imagine that there is some testing procedure and some vaccination program in a country. You would have your test or vaccination certificate on paper or digital. Then you verify that in the same way, and then you only transfer it to, I don't know, border guard or another hospital or concert organizer by yourself as an individual. So they don't need to make any queries about your sensitive data, and you only show when and where you would like to. However, they can really verify that what you are presenting them is valid. And then again, each of them can build their own workflows, which go in a very complex, diverse directions. So this is my vision for the future, where at certain points you have information that comes together. You as an individual control that information, but you are capable of engaging with very different stakeholders inside healthcare, outside healthcare. Each of them can follow their own workflows, and everything is still visible to the extent that you as an individual know where and how and when your data went, but also every single stakeholders can be held accountable for their actions. So thank you very much. I will finish with this slide on my dream. So I hope the future healthcare will be real time. Payment will be based on value. Data is, the personalized decision making is driven by data. There is real world evidence used all the time. Services are invisible, and governance is frictionless. Thank you.
This was an interesting presentation, shares a lot of interesting ideas. And before we look at the Q&A, I would like to have the second Estonian speaker for today, and equally smart and brilliant Tõnu Esko, who is also a PhD and Vice Director of Development and Head of Estonian Biobank Innovation. I think Biobank and in general, biotech research is another strength area of Estonia. So it's great to have Tõnu's thoughts, and across the Estonian presentations, starting from Sven's introduction, we keep hearing about X-Road, and I think we will hear more also from Tõnu. We just learned from Ain's presentation as well. So I would request Tõnu's presentation to be next.
So hello everybody, and thanks for joining this online event. My name is Tõnu Esko. I'm the professor of human genomics at the Institute of Genomics at the University of Tartu, and today I'm talking about the Estonian Biobank and how that can contribute to the personalized medicine. And I have been working with the Biobank for the past 14 years since the build-up of it, and I think it's pretty nice resource that could unlock a lot of potential for the future of healthcare with all kind of different tools and services based on either big data or human genomics. But let's get started. So I always like to start with this very simple cartoon which highlights the importance of both genetic risk factors and lifestyle risk factors in our risk of developing a certain disease. So we have genes, we have lifestyle, and as outcome we have a disease. So on the figure you can see this green guy, and on top of him is a glass, and then it's filled with a certain number of bad genes or bad mutations. And it's fair to say that every one of us has some bad genetic variants, and every one of us has good genetic variants. So no one is perfect, so having no bad variants, but no one also has all the bad variants. So it's important to know as early as possible what's our position there, how many bad genetic variants we have. And so once we start to age and encounter different adverse lifestyles, our risk tolerance starts to build up. And it means that as we age and practice more unhealthy or suboptimal lifestyle, things like, you know, not eating that healthy anymore, or not moving that much anymore, or in current case, you know, with the COVID, you know, being too stressed over all the things. So our picture starts to get full and full, and then at a certain point, the glass is full, and as a next step, it then can be even like a minor thing, we could develop a disease. So it's both important to know your genetic background, and then also know and modify your lifestyle, because the more genetic risk you have for a certain disease, the less flexibility, so to say, you have in your lifestyle choices. So it's important to know it, and this goes across all common diseases: cardiovascular disease, high blood pressure, diabetes, cancer, and you name it. But it's also a further way how genetics could have an impact in the modern medicine, and it's how we as patients are treated. So the paradigm is that, you know, we all have the same disease, and then it's usually treated with the same drug. But as I've shown again with these colorful figures, we genetically are all different, and it means that for certain people, certain drugs work or have a good effect, and for others, for example, they might even cause more problems than just not taking. And this, you know, illustrated in a way that, you know, there are a group of people who, when taking the drug, it has an effect, they will get ill, there are no toxic side effects, but there are also those that actually don't have any beneficial effects from the medicine, but could have some bad side effects, like, you know, some liver toxicity or some bad inflammation and other such things. There are occasions where the drug does not have any effect, and also doesn't have any side effects. So this is a way, you know, just a waste of common fund when there is a common healthcare. And then there are people on drugs where you have both effect and it's also toxic. And here a good example is, for example, cancer medicine, where it's a poison that is, you know, directed by the genetic makeup of the cancer, and it has effect, but it's also harmful for the citizen. So this is just like an introduction about how genetics and big data, when combined with genetic factors, could really lead to new and effective medicine and treatments. Just as I don't know what my previous speakers have been talking about, I very briefly just mentioned that in other Nordic countries, in Estonia, we have a personal identification code that is made up of 9 digits, and we also have a mandatory ID document that is mandatory for all Estonian citizens. So we all have but it also means that we just not have a common identifier across all the different databases, but we also have a valid email address that is given by the state. So there is a easy way how to contact us by the state. And this plastic card with the chip gives us the ability to give electronic signatures, which means that we can do almost everything online: signing contracts, signing agreements, decrypting documents, and so on and so forth. So there's 3 things we can't do. It's getting married, getting divorced, and buying land. But I think the getting married and getting divorced is already solved. So it's just the buying land piece that where we have to really see a lawyer. And this framework actually has given us by the state a lot of different services that can be done, that can be used online every time, and makes your life super easy. But similar, this is true for healthcare system, where all the different stakeholders, service providers, hospitals, pharmacies, they're actually interconnected by the state provided framework called X-Road. And by this X-Road, as the data moves around, is encrypted, and we all have the digital personal identification code. So this data movement is super smooth. And if there is a legal framework and a pipeline where all this data could be gathered and used, then it's very smooth and fluent, because the data is already machine readable and shared in a standardized way. That is something that is not very common or present in most of the countries across the world. So now we come to the Estonian Biobank. So this is a big repository of both biological information and digital health data, and this consists of more than 200,000 participants, which match up to more than 20% of Estonian adult citizens. It's a research institute under University of Tartu, and it was founded in year 2000, so it's almost 20 years old. But what makes it unique is that we were the first biobank that had its own biobanking law, and that doesn't just regulate how the data is used and what are the rights or obligations for the database custodians, but more important, it gives the participants a lot of rights and protections against discrimination and misuse of the genetic information. And also a component was when people joined the biobank, they also signed a broad informed consent. And in this broad informed consent, they actually give us the right to contact them, to invite them to be part of their research studies. It gives us the right to actually connect with this X-Road infrastructure to retrieve health information across all the hospitals, health records, registries, prescription databases, all. And it also gives the participants the right to know, but also not to know their genetic risks if they decide it that way. So this is pretty unique, and most of the global biobanks don't offer anything back to the participants, and this is written in the law in Estonia. And just like a snapshot, like what the biobank looks like. So those are the tanks where we keep all the biosamples. We keep DNA, plasma, and white blood cells. And on the right, you can see this disease trajectory for a single biobank participant. And here you can see that all our records go back in time, but also extend in the future, and meaning that we can throw up this type of trajectories to see what kind of diseases cause the next disease, what are the comorbidities for certain illnesses. Does the trajectory change if different type of procedures, treatments, medications have been used? And just in the bottom, I've listed some of the sources that we retrieve our information, and you can see that the numbers are quite mind-blowing. We have more than 10 million documents or features, diagnoses, clinical labs across all our participants. So this is really proper big data, especially when it's combined with the genetic profiles, and all our 200,000 participants have been profiled with genotyping arrays. So this is a technology that captures 700,000 mutations from our genome. Just as a comparison, if you would do full genome sequencing, then you would get the complete information of 3.3 billion base pairs from our genome. But our arrays, this is 700,000, but there are tools to expand that information. And our activities, especially this action 2 years ago, where we went out to try to recruit more than 100,000 participants less than 9 months, got a lot of recognition and was noticed across the globe. And Estonia indeed is one of the forerunners on getting such a big part of the population genetically profiled, and not just profiled, but open that data for research, open that data for clinical work, for benefit of the participants. And also we are quite a lot of thinking about ways how to open up the data for business creation, for providing a platform for developing, validating, improving different tools and services, either diagnostic, treatment, or preventive. And this is just a couple of news stories. There are like tens, if not hundreds of such stories you can find online. But now how we can boost innovation if we have such a database available? Maybe again, like a point of reference, I personally think that if you take this the Estonian Biobank and compare it to other biobanks globally, it's fair to say that we position among the top 5, at least, maybe not always by the numbers, but just the combination of the law, the digitalization of data, the public awareness, the state-provided infrastructure, and also some of the state-funded clinical trials around genetic prevention that I will mention on my next slides. So just to sum up a little bit or give the background on what genetics really could be used in healthcare, then I have it on this quite complex slide, and this goes from newborns and family planning to high impact cascade screens, cancer mutations or precision diagnostics, prevention, stratified prevention using polygenic risk scores, and pharmacogenomics when prescribing medicines. I'm not going into details, but you can just see that almost everyone, and it's fair to say that actually everyone has something in their genome that at a certain point in life has a major impact to their healthcare. It could be that it's just one super bad mutation in your child, or in family planning, there is something in the genome that doesn't really fit your partner's genome, or when prescribing medicine, you have an illness that is, when treated with a certain drug, it will have a massive side effect. So there is something things that are super rare and super common, but there is always something for everyone's genome. So the future of medicine is definitely genetic medicine, and it makes sense to keep an eye on different development or coming up with tools and services that one way or the other would like or could use the genetics in providing better care for the patients. And just how such a genetic report, when it would exist, could look like. This is a snapshot for a mock genetic feedback report from our own biobank participants, and this is focused on the genetic prevention. So using polygenic risk scores, and this is principally a disease can be used by one mutation or many. and polygenic risk score, it means that there are many genetic fixed factors, and it's just a score just counts like how many you have and what effect it has. And this is just a visual representation, on your score. Are you in the bottom with being very green, or in very top being super red? And here we have modeled your genetic background with your previous lifestyle, and then made a prediction into the future. So in this case, this man, if he would keep his lifestyle in check and keep his body mass index on bar, then actually the elevated genetic risk wouldn't really play out, and there is a substantially lower risk for developing diabetes when, for example, this person having both the very high genetic risk and very high clinical risk factors, in this case obesity. So this is just one example how it looks like. This is another example. This is for pharmacogenomics. Pharmacogenomics, as I explained, is a way of using your genetic background and then choosing or avoiding certain medicines, or making your dosage more suitable. And again, like very visual, it's just having like a green, yellow, or red marks, and there's a lot of information about which gene, which mutation, what's the effect on the use of the medicine, and what are the different molecules that are affected by certain genotype. And for both examples, polygenic risk scores and pharmacogenomics, we actually have ongoing state-funded clinical trials where in both cases 1,000 people polygenic risk score diabetes, cardiovascular disease, and breast cancer. 1,000 people will receive the genetic risk score and will get invited back to the screening, mammography screening in case of breast cancer. And only people with the top 5% of the risk score invited back. And another trial or project ongoing is actually building the system, nationwide system that connects the Biobank, connects the prescription database, and connects the hospitals and doctor's desktop, so that anytime a Biobank participant goes to see a medical doctor and gets a medicine prescribed, then the system automatically controls if this person has a certain genetic variants that affect the prescription for a certain medicine. Either we have to take 5 pills instead of 1, or use completely different drug. So, vision for the future. I already mentioned this Estonian personalized medicine program, and this is a collaboration between Ministry of Social Affairs, Institute of Health and Welfare, and also University of Tartu, University of Tallinn, where we try to develop the infrastructure, IT infrastructure, legal infrastructure, automated decision supports. This also requires that clinicians get additional training in understanding the genetics and what impact it has to the patients and then their treatment practices. But also it requires the involvement of the Estonian Health Insurance Fund, because there has to be a mechanism how the use of such digital tools, digital preventive measures, the use of the algorithms also has to be reimbursed, and how this, and also how into this complex framework the private sector plays in, and even the question like who should develop all those digital tools for interpretation of the genome, providing feedback to the participants, providing automated decision engine for the medical doctors to improve the treatments. And while I've focused very much on genetics, because this is what my background is in, but of course such a framework, when treatment data and record health data is digital, machine readable, structured and high quality, then of course such a framework and movement of data would also benefit every patient if it's not just genetic, but actually all health data is digital and machine readable. And this way complex algorithms like machine learning or artificial intelligence and further could be applied, and that way hidden patterns from the patient records could be identified. So my concluding slide, is Estonia or the world in general ready for personalized healthcare? Then my answer is a definite yes, because there are 5 main reasons why I think it's so. First, we already have electronic health records. We already have many services in healthcare online, and in case of Estonia, 100% of all prescriptions come in electronic. Almost everything is already electronic in healthcare. So it's just to next step is to just make sure that the data in this e-infrastructure is also machine readable and cross-referenced and and available for research. Then the second point is that genomic technology is super advanced and super cost efficient. We can read an array-based genome for less than 20 euros. We can read an exome almost less than 200 euros, and very soon we will have the full genome at the cost of 100 euros. So the data is there. If not today, then definitely in a 2 weeks time. We have the scientific and medical expertise. A lot of science has been done around the genomics, and also the medical experts now appreciate the use of big data in healthcare, and actually see the value in using the technology to interpret the health data. As I said, a lot of science has been done around understanding the genome, what causes the risk, what is okay, what mutations are harmful, how to construct polygenic risk scores for diseases. And last but not least, in my mind, the citizens are super interested in personalized genome-based health models. Our participants are super aware. They want to get their genetic risks. They're standing in queues to get this information back. And they are actually super annoyed that why the heck the medical doctors and the state and the most, we at the Biobank haven't yet implemented the mechanisms how they could use this information, or how their medical doctors could use this information, both genetic and digital healthcare, to really have a major impact on their health. So happy to take questions. Those are our partners and the people at the Biobank. And thanks for listening.
So Dr. Ein, if you can switch on your camera.
Hello.
So how are you today?
Good, thank you. Thank you. Great show. Like it. My 12 points to you.
I don't know if you have heard of William Gibson saying the future is already here, but it's unevenly distributed.
Indeed.
So I asked the participants as a survey how many of them have been to Estonia, and it seems like many have not been. So does Estonia exist? Is it true? What do you tell us?
Yes, Estonia does exist. It is the best place to be during these uncertain times and before that. But every now and then I like to visit other places as well. So that I think that's the summary.
Yeah, well, that was on the lighter side, having studied in University of Tartu like you. When I go back to my people in India and I tell them, there's this country and they have this and they have that. So everybody kind of dismisses, my stories because they think it's like a utopia. And indeed it is, So before I bore you with my questions, let me ask you some of the questions which are coming from the participants. So there is 2 questions from Mr. Govind Rajan. He's asking about, this fair data, the findable, accessible, interoperable, and reusable. Do you have any viewpoint on this when it comes to Estonia?
Yeah, thank you. That is absolutely a critical question. Yeah, you framed it correctly, which is, if the landscape is isolated, consists of isolated data points, so how can we apply the fair data principles? My answer is that it depends on what is the scope that you have in mind. And also, I think already 10 years ago, it was the chief information officer from Mayo Clinic who said that they gave up tagging all the data that is created every day, because the volume and the amount of data that comes in is much larger than we can actually use that, which means that we see that you create, you make use of the FAIR principles around certain tasks that you have ahead, and you can never have the situation when everything is findable, accessible, reusable, and what's the I? Now I forgot.
Interoperable.
Interoperable, yeah. But you can always work with some of the data points. So just as an example, the market access solution for real world data, we usually start with a data landscape study, and then maybe initially participants have in mind that they would like to have 15 different data points for that specific query in question. And then we end up that, okay, 10 of them are available and findable and interoperable. And then maybe only 8 of them have of decent quality when the service starts. So that this is something that you strive for. And this is also that gradually improves, but there is always a certain part that you can't access. So you have to, it keeps you fit if you have those principles in mind.
Sure, sure. I think that would have answered the question for Mr. Govindarajan. Let me also bring in Sven here. I think, Sven, you can do betting on behalf of Tõnu today. And
Yes.
I am sure even Ain can take that question because he has been a policymaker. So what is the, let me ask this question to both of you. What is the say Estonian citizens have in the policy for the biobank? Short answer from both of you.
So, Ain, do you want to
go first?
If I start. Okay, so technically, I don't know how many of you know, but the Estonian Genome Act is relatively different from what many countries have in the Western world, in the sense that it's pretty much the only biobank where the biobank people are allowed to contact the people based on their genetic profile. Of course, they don't have to, the people don't have to participate in any intervention studies or other type of investigation, but at least there's a right. So I'd say that the Estonian common population is a very supportive of this act, and actually Estonian Genome Bank it has many times and is continuously monitoring the overall acceptance of what is done with the Genome Bank data and how people react. So my answer from this is that they have the same rights as all the people have in a Western and democratic country, and Genome Bank is very well aware of what people are, what's the general opinion of the biobank, and if it seems that the biobank is doing something people are not really open for, then this will come up quite easily, and probably they have to change the course as the funding and everything is still based on public money. So I would approach this question from that angle. So I don't know, Ain, if you have a different view. So please.
No, at least not conflicting in any way. First, Estonian Biobank law was passed to support nationwide research project. And it was quite insightful in the future. So it starts from the premise that everyone who joins does so through informed consent, that it is a research project, and also similarly to all the rules that now are through GDPR applied everywhere in Europe, but they were there already 17 years ago in Estonia. You have the right to withdraw. You can't, of course, unwrite the articles that have been published using your data, but you can withdraw any further processing of your data. The new thing that Tõnu demonstrated should actually add what I would call dynamic consent, so that if there are a new and go outside of the research project, maybe services rendered based on that data, then this is being built, and this is being built having in mind exactly as the question was posed, so that people would have direct say in how the data is being used. This is, in my understanding, in the testing phase, but indeed, from the start, design that people can control the data is embedded in it.
Thank you, Dr. Ain. Thank you, Sven.